Excel 2007, Consolidate Data. Here in this nugget, we are going to manage multiple worksheets. In fact, the idea is we have an East Regional Sales Excel file, and we have many different sheets with different employees, all with their first quarter sales. Well, we want to make a new sheet that takes all of the salespeople's numbers and adds them together. So we have a really easy to view, easy to understand concoction that shows all of the sales for our East region. We're going to use the Consolidate tool to put this together. Not only can we sum information, but we can also find averages and other data as well. There is another way that we can consolidate information. We can simply create formulas. So we'll do that within our West regional sales spreadsheet. We'll take advantage of something called a 3D range. It's a 3D range because data is coming from other worksheets. Well, if we've got our East region sales and our West region sales in different workbooks, wouldn't it be nice to still consolidate that together? Those are in different workbooks. We can consolidate them, and once we do need to make sure that those links are accurate and up to date. So we'll get into how we can work with our workbook connections here in this nugget as well. Let's go ahead and jump right on into Excel. Here is our East Region Sales workbook. A workbook simply means it's a file made up of worksheets. I have 3 employees that I've collected data for. I've got Nancy, Miguel, and Martin. Each one of these worksheets looks exactly the same, which is key to setting up your consolidation appropriately. I've got Nancy here. Her information spans January, February, and March, just for a few of the sports items that we sell. I've totaled each month. I've totaled each of the sports pieces of equipment, and I've also gotten a grand total. The grand total is also up here because I just simply linked this cell back here. I thought it'd be easy to understand at a glance that Nancy has sold over $67,000 in this quarter. So Miguel, same layout. Martin, the very same layout. So let's go ahead and consolidate this information. Step number 1, go to the destination where you want your consolidated data. I'm going to go to a new sheet, and I'm going to call this sheet just simply Consolidate. And I'll press Enter to lock that in. Now I need to click the cell where I want this information to show. I don't want it at the top. I'm leaving a few extra rows open so that I can label it with more information. I'm now ready to grab that Consolidate tool. It's here on the Data ribbon in the Data Tools area. It's called Consolidate. When I click on this, it launches the Consolidate dialog box. Here, the first thing I can do is choose the function. I'm going to stick with sum, but notice I can count data from multiple worksheets, multiple cells, average, find the maximum value in a range, the minimum. I can find specific items as well. We are going to stick with the sum. The next step is to choose the cells that I want to consolidate. That's our reference area. When I click on this button with the red arrow, it allows me to go out, click and drag on ranges of cells. I'm going to go back to the Nancy sheet and select everything here from the data. It's saying Nancy exclamation mark. That is Excel syntax to say the sheet. That exclamation mark is part of the syntax. Then I have my cell range A4 through E8. That's correct, A4 through E8. That colon says, hey, it's a range, so everything in between those cells should be included in that range. And of course, we see the dashed lines indicating that's our range. Those dollar signs indicate an absolute reference versus a relative reference. With an absolute reference, that means no matter what, no matter where I copy these formulas, I'm always talking about the Nancy sheet and the range A4 through E8. Absolute references are the norm here in this type of formula, but generally speaking, Excel gives you a relative reference, which means if you copy a formula from one location to another, Excel updates and says, oh, well, you've copied the formula from cell A5 down to A6, so you probably want me to adjust relative to where you copied this formula and just move down a row and over a column, or in that example, just down a row. So that looks correct, and I can click this button to launch this dialog box again. I'll click Add because now it's locked in. It's saying no matter what, hey, right now we're going to consolidate Nancy. But we want some more references. So I can click on this red arrow button again, and now I'll go to Miguel's information and select that range. I can click Enter on my keyboard instead of clicking this button. It will do the same thing. I'll click Add, and now I'll go grab Martin's information. Go to the Martin tab, I'll click and drag and select his data, and I'll click this button and choose Add. So now I have 3 sheets in 3 ranges that I'm referencing. I'm going to come back to these checkboxes shortly. When I choose OK, it's going to take me to my destination, which is Consolidate, and show me the data. You might recall from previous nuggets, Excel will show you pound signs if it can't display the entire number to you. That's so you don't make a mistake and assume a number is one thing, but you really have it wrong. I want to resize this column. I can just auto-fit it by putting my pointer on the right side of that column that I want to resize, column E, and by double-clicking, it'll just resize that column to accommodate the largest piece of information. Notice it took the formatting. I do have my accounting formatting, and here's my information. $21,000 for cell B6. So I did not click the checkbox for linking. Let's test it out. If I go back to Nancy and I change her $8,000 to $10,000, I should have an extra $2,000 if they're linked together, but it's not linked, so I don't. It retains the $21,000. This might be good, it might be bad. Why would it be good? Well, because no matter what, I've taken a snapshot of the data as it was at that point in time. If someone goes back and makes an adjustment to older data, it doesn't affect this report. That could be good because maybe this is a report before we went back and checked our accounting and re-added some information. So maybe that's okay. But you know what? Let's go ahead and do this activity one more time, this time by adding in the links and also adding in the labels so we can tell really what this information is all about. I mean, I could retype it if I wanted to, but why not just have it in from the beginning? So I'll do a new worksheet. I'll call this Consolidate Link. Hit Enter, and I'll go ahead and select cell A5. I'll go to my Consolidate tool again. I'm going to still sum it. This time I do want to make sure I have the labels and the links. This way you get to see the process again. I'll go to this red arrow, back to Nancy, select the range, press Enter, Add. Go to the red arrow again, grab Miguel's information. It's already selected. That looks good. Add. And let's go grab Martin's information as well. Enter, Add. Now I should have all this. Okay, Consolidate Link. I do have my labels. I'm going to resize again. But I have a new column here that I didn't have before. I also have the pluses here that I didn't have before. Pluses are here because it's now an outline. And we'll talk about outlines at a later point in time, how you actually create them. But here we're seeing the value because contracted underneath batting gloves was all the data that built this total 23,000. I'm going to resize column B here, and I see that's why I had this new column, because it's labeling the file East Region Sales Totals. That's where the data came from. We have Nancy at the bottom because she was at the bottom in the dialog box. 10,000, 7,500, 5,500 equals 2,300 for batting gloves. I could also click the plus next to baseball caps to see that data, the plus next to baseballs. Let's scroll down a little bit, and the plus next to totals. So here is all my base data as an outline. Now I could just click the pluses and the minuses to navigate through this data, or I could go right up here. If I click on the 2, it expands everything. The 1 will contract everything. This is a nice, easy snapshot here. Bam! I see all the totals. This expands it all. I see the base data. I'm going to contract that once more, and just for my own understanding, I'm going to call this Cumulative East Region Sales Totals. I could make it look prettier. if I wanted to, bold it, whatever it is that I would want to do. All right, now we have the labels. Let's test out and see if we have those links. So we're at $23,000. If we go back to Nancy and put her back to 8,000 and hit enter, go to Consolidate Link, look at that. It went back to $21,000. So we've linked this information. Remember before I said, well, it could be good or it could be bad. This is all based off of your own business processes. In my opinion, for this type of performance, for this type of exercise, it's better to link it, because if we got a late invoice or some sort of data was recognized after we ran this report, after we created this consolidation, we would collect that information. It's also good because maybe you can just create this worksheet for Q1 and then make copies of it for Q2, Q3, Q4, maybe even into other workbooks. And then when those dates roll around, you can apply the information. So you can do some pre-work, and then you'll be able to collect the information at a later point in time. Less work in the long run. I'm always for doing less work in the long run. What is that? Work smarter, not harder. Let's go ahead and work through this exercise one more time, but this time we'll gather the average information. I'm going to just call this one averages. Enter. And I'll go to cell A5 again. You know what? I could be in any cell I wanted to. I could be in A1. Let's go ahead and go to A1 just so you can see. Back to the tool on the data ribbon, consolidate. This time I'm going to average. Same deal here. I'm going to flip back here to Nancy. See, we're getting quicker at this, aren't we? Add it. Miguel. Enter key. Add. Oops, I need to make sure I put these checks in. You can do that at any point in time, which is nice. And now let's get Martin's information. It's already selected. Okay, add that in. All right. Resize. Averages. That makes sense, right? It was 21,000, but if we were to average 5,500, 7,500, and 8,000, that average looks about right. We can even select this information and take a look down here. Average 7,000. We have 3 cells selected. The maximum value is 8,000, and the sum, as we knew before, is 21,000. We've talked about these nice little items down here in previous nuggets, but I just wanted to remind you that on the fly, it's a great way to validate your work or even gather more information. Our work with the Consolidate tool is done now. I'm going to save this workbook. We've done quite a bit of work in here. I wouldn't want to see that go to waste. I'm now going to minimize my East Region sales and go to this West Region sales that I already have open. The same idea. I've got Mary, I've got Kelly, and I've got Gino. They all work in a different region, and they have a different workbook that they access to give their information, or maybe they have a different sales manager that inputs this information. At any rate, we've got it as a separate file, but it's the very same layout, which again is key to consolidating data. You need to have the same setup with your data, the same type of labels, the same number of columns, the same type of data that you're collecting. This time, I'm going to consolidate data, but I'm going to use formulas. I'll call this Consolidate again. It doesn't have to have a unique name in the overall scheme of what I'm doing, but it does have to be unique within the same file or the same workbook. Now, formulas always start with an equal sign. I'm going to create a simple formula. I'll click on the equal sign, and I want to bring the data from Mary's sheet forward. I'll do equal sign Mary, and I'm going to grab $11,000. When I hit enter, it's showing me that. Here's the formula, equal sign Mary, exclamation mark B5. I can also double click here to see the formula. That exclamation mark, again, is Excel syntax that indicates that I've indicated the sheet, which is called Mary, and then the cell range is simply B5. Well, that's well and good, but I'm not consolidating anything here, am I? To consolidate, I can simply add information together. I'll click plus on my keyboard, and now I'll go grab Kelly's information. And here's my working formula up here. I'll click plus. This time I'm going to go to Gino's tab and choose B5. Now I can click enter, make sure that this formula